In today's show, it's a mailbag episode answering the question, do pass first point guards still exist? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, it's a mailbag episode, answering listener-submitted questions all episode long. If you want to get involved in a future mailbag episode, the place to reach me is lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. Every so often, if I'm in a pinch, I solicit these call for questions on social media, but the email address is the number one, also number two, and probably number three place to reach me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, like many of your fellow listeners have. We'll get into questions today about Scoot Henderson. We'll also answer questions about vibes and the rebuild, and finally a couple questions about Donovan and Clingan, as well as winning. Yes, the problem with W's. Let's start here. Join me in the Wayback Machine very briefly, where listener Casey, in February of 2024, nearly a full calendar year ago, sent an email to me asking if Scoot Henderson was an anachronism. And if there's one thing I like, it's when my listeners show that they are as nerdy as I am. An anachronism. He's a man outside of time. He is a man that does not fit in his current timeline. Is Scoot Henderson an anachronism? Is he a player that is just from another era? Is his archetype actually a player from another era? And if you push the type of player Scoot Henderson is into 2024, is that a problem? And back in February of 2024, I said, I don't know, Case. I don't know, listener Casey. Like, this is the end of his first season as a teenage point guard. What we know about Scoot Henderson is that he had a bad rookie year, and he would actually close following that email with his strongest stretch of play of his career. And it's like, I don't feel necessarily need to make sweeping generalizations, although I do love the idea of an anachronism. It's beautiful. It's beautiful stuff. This is the type of email that really piques my interest, which is why I'm referencing it 335 days later. Incredible. Casey sent a follow-up email in December. It's like, still kind of worried about Scoot Henderson, not because of the talent, but because of what his talents are. I said, yeah, you might be right. I'm starting to see the other side. I'm starting to realize what you mean by anachronism. And I didn't, I didn't say 100% correct, but it's like a lot of these email stuff. It's like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. That's why I like the email, because we don't have to agree, but we can figure out the parts of the things we do agree on, if not wholly, but partially. So that's a couple emails from Casey over the course of 10 months. Then just this week, the good longtime listener of the program, Jess, the good Reverend Doctor, said in an email, is Scoot a pass first point guard? And if so, the problem seems to be that the NBA has gone away from them. Has the pass first point guard gone the way of the power forward? And I mentioned this in the program, that I think the NBA just kind of stylistically has killed the traditional power forward. There just aren't big, bruising, burly power forwards very often anymore. There's a handful of them across the league here and there, but even like the Julius Randle types are more skilled than they were in the past. It's just a position that has largely gone extinct by virtue of league style and preferences and a push towards skill over a lot of different things. You can find traditional power forwards, but they are rare. So has the NBA gone away from pass first point guards? Is Scoot Henderson someone who has a lot of pass first point guard tendencies, an anachronism, a player outside of time who doesn't belong in this timeline? Maybe. And here's what I want to say. I think there are pass-first point guards in the NBA. I think Tyus Jones is a pretty good example of this. I think Monty Morris is a pretty good example of this in Phoenix. Both of them. I think T.J. McConnell, to some extent, is a pretty good example of a pass-first point guard, a guy who's like guys who are truly there to set up their teammates. To some extent, Tyrese Halliburton is a pass-first point guard, although the premier version of Tyrese Halliburton scored. And that's the thing. Scoot Henderson has made strides this year. He still is like, his rookie season was really rough, right? I think he's undeniably better in year 2. He's not better, like, it's not like he's made this massive leap, right? He's not so much better as to say, like, it actually, he's made these big strides. And I'm not trying to sell you on big strides. What I'm trying to sell you on is, like, if you watch the games, which I have, if you watch, every minute of the Scoot Henderson experience, it's clear that he's better in year 2 than he was in year 1. His comfort level is better. His decision-making has improved. His just, like, knowing when to be, knowing the timing of how defenses are going to react to what he does has been better. But the offense, his own individual scoring really has, while it is better, hasn't taken the leap forward that would allow you to be super comfortable with it. He has improved a great deal as a finisher at the rim and remains a below-average finisher at the rim. He's improved as a corner three-point shooter. Overall, his three-point shooting is down, but he's improved corner three-point shooter, which is helpful for Scoot to have a little bit of off-ball game to play as an off-ball scorer. Because if you're in the off-ball score as a guard, typically they're going to put you in the weak side corner, and then you're going to generate some shots there. Sometimes put you in the strong side corner, depending on how they want to manipulate the defense. But that's a place, if you are a guard, where you're going to go. That's probably not the best place to utilize Scoot and his skill set, but that's a skill, eventually you have to add a little bit of that, right? So the question is, and I think this is first posed by Casey and then the Reverend Doctor, is like, if Scoot is a pass-first point guard, because clearly the offense hasn't taken a step, and clearly the thing that he has improved this year is the playmaking. And if that's what he is that a viable NBA starter? And my worry is that it might be anachronistic. It might be that archetype of player just might not be a starting point. That's not what starting point guards and high-level point guards do in the league anymore. They have to score. Starting point guards have to score. Starting point guards have to score. You have to be able to score. What people like to point to is like, well, he could be a lot like Chris Paul. Chris Paul is like one of the very easily one of the 10 best point guards of all time. For my money, probably one of the 5 best point guards of all time. There's some folks that I've missed along the way. I was born in the 80s. I don't have the full breadth of NBA history at my fingertips in terms of watching them with my own 2 eyeballs. But to me, like, Chris Paul's an all-time great point guard. And in Chris Paul's prime, he was a 19-10 guy, no problem. From 2008 to 2016, Chris Paul made 8 consecutive all-star teams. And in 7 of those 8 years, in fact, every single one of those years that he played 50 games, he also received MVP votes. This is one of the best that we've ever seen. And he averaged 19 and 10, and he shot 51% from the floor and 37% from 3. Right now, Scoot's effective field goal percentage, even including three-pointers, is 45%. Excuse me, that 51% is from 2, is what I'm quoting for Chris Paul, and he shot 37% from 3. He was Scoot shooting 31% from 3 this year. You just what made Chris Paul so special, and I'm not saying that Scoot Henderson needs to be Chris Paul. To be clear, what made Chris Paul so special is that he's one of the best mid-range shooters in the history of the sport. You don't play at age 40 at 6 feet tall without some real specialness to your game. And prime Chris Paul, if you weren't old enough to remember, was also a bucket and could go score and would score in crunch time, even though he was still averaging a league best 10 and 11 assists a game for a decade. Scoot Henderson has a lot of positive outcomes to be a positive NBA player growing in the path that he is growing right now. Playmaker. He's a natural playmaker. He's a good simple pass maker, as they've mentioned in the Blazers broadcast and I've referenced, where it's just like Scoot makes easy reads and makes passes quickly makes the easy reads. Sometimes that's really important in the NBA. Quickly make the easiest reads, and Scoot has improved in that way. The ability just to like set guys up and get them in their spots and have a feel for where guys want it. Scoot has improved there. Scoot has improved his decision making. He clearly is a talented playmaker. The question is, from listener Casey and listener the good Reverend Doctor, listener Jess, which I think this is an interesting observation, is that perhaps the archetype that Scoot is most comfortable growing into is one that just does not exist for starting point guards and lead guards and high-level star guards in the league. You look across the league, what guards make the All-Star game? Obviously, the All-Star game is going to put an emphasis on points, but what guards make the All-Star game? Dudes who score. Look at the star guards across the league. They score. If Scoot Henderson is going to reach the highest outcomes, he can't be a pass first point guard because those players don't exist. But there are positive outcomes in which Scoot is like a Ricky Rubio, Tyus Jones type, and has like a long and positive NBA career. But that is not an archetype. That is not a player type. That is not a role where you often see high-level starting guards in the modern NBA. Pass first point guards, whom I love, are backups. That is the way the modern game works. It's not ideal to draft a backup point guard at number 3 overall, and it's certainly not set in stone that this is what Scoot is forever at age 20. But right now, what he is trending towards is that anachronism that Casey mentioned way back in February of 2024. The people who listen to this show are wise, and sometimes they are a year ahead of the trends. Shout out to all of you. Okay, more questions, including one about vibes and Anthony Simons and how to balance losing and feeling good in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you about Ultimate College Basketball HC. It's a brand new mobile game it allows you to be a college basketball head coach. It's your chance to step into those shoes. It's in Ultimate College Basketball HC. You control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive plays, set your strategy, and the way you play won't just affect the season that you're playing right then. It will shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. And here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use promo code Locked On CBB, all caps, Locked On CBB inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. Download Ultimate College Basketball HC. Just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, let's keep rolling along with our mailbag. If you want to get involved in a future mailbag, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. I had to add the pod because I didn't get the old email from Eric. Shout out to Eric, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. This next question comes from listener Clint. And listener Clint sent me a series of long emails. We went back and forth. That's why I like the email. I like learning from y'all. I like hearing from listeners who have thoughtful responses and thoughtful considerations of the show. You out there, let me be clear. Y'all drive the show, and particularly those of you who are watching the majority of the game for this team and thinking about them a lot, right? I want to hear from you because I am also watching all these games and thinking about them a lot, and it helps me kind of steer my thinking and make the best version of this. So email me if you have some thoughtful considerations to offer. I would love to hear from you. Like I heard from Clint, and Clint offered the following: I have been concerned all season long that the organizational long game, in parentheses, let's get ping pong balls, will have a detrimental effect on some players, their output, and their subsequent trade value. The dynamics of playing for the future while keeping veterans happy enough that the culture doesn't turn toxic is a high wire act at best. Have the Blazers already lost their balance? Can they regain their footing and make it across the wire? This is a question in light of a story written by Jason Quick in The Athletic, where he had like a mini profile and mostly an interview with Anthony Simons, basically saying I'm having the crappiest season of my career, and part of having that crappy season is because we are losing, and it is hard to get back on track because I am bummed about the losing, basically. And there's some stuff I would quibble with in there, and I'm not going to walk you through everything that Jason wrote, and it's behind a paywall, so if you want to read good journalism, And Jason, he's been at some games recently. We sat together on press row. Welcome back, welcome back quick. Jason coming in and writing this well-reported story is it's good and interesting stuff, and it leads to interesting questions like this. So while maybe I don't agree with every single takeaway from the story, I'm very thankful for thoughtful and quality, unique reporting about the Trailblazers, to be certain. But the story that Quick wrote kind of centers around how Anthony Simons is like, he's having a bad year, and that Ant kind of says like, when he first came into the league in 2018, the culture and just everyone around the team is just different. And the culture around the team feels worse now, is basically what Anthony Simons is saying in so many words. Like, it feels worse now. And some of it is because they've spent several years losing on purpose. And when you kind of put that, when everyone knows the score of the game, and everyone in the building knows what the deal is, and when things start to roll downhill, and instead of it feeling like a disaster, it feels like the plan all along, it can wear on guys. And I think that what Anthony Simons is saying in that story in The Athletic is kind of starting to wear on him a little bit, right? It's starting to feel like, yeah, this isn't great. And then just staring down like the future is like, how do we get out of the hole? Some of it is like, Anthony Simons is just straight up not good enough to pull them out of the hole, and that's the problem, right? Like, and I think that is kind of an unsaid part of the whole thing. But I think the larger question that Clint is asking here is like, have the Blazers already lost their balance? Have they gone sort of too far here where like Jeremy Grant's having the worst season he's had in 7 years? Anthony Simons is, although he's played a lot better lately, started off very, very bumpy. Just raw production wise, DeAndre Ayton's production is down, and like, did they get too far down this act, and the milk's gone bad a little bit, and there's no way to fix it, and now you're just dealing with the like, okay, the vibes aren't great, the trade value for these veterans aren't great, and there's just kind of it. Not that things are like totally cooked or whatever, totally spoiled, but that they are like such that it's going to take some salvaging, right? It's going to take some time to salvage where you have gone towards. I think I subscribe to a little bit of it. I think the way you get out of this is you add talent to the roster, right? I think winning can cure years of losing in a hurry. I think like, if you look at Houston, when they had 4 seasons when they were really, really stinky, and Steven Silas was their coach, and they had a whole Kevin Porter Jr. mess, and it was just like they were really bad, and I feel like there was a lot of it's maybe not the same as Portland because it doesn't feel as messy here. It just kind of feels like there's like malaise. I think it's more described as like veteran malaise here in Portland than like really messy bad culture stuff. It's like, when they got the right coach and they added some veterans, and Dillon Brooks has been good for Houston. I think people think Dillon Brooks sucks, but he's been good for Houston. Fred VanVleet is a really steadying presence as a vet. And when they added those vets and the young players kind of slowly took a step forward, and they hired the right coach to kind of get them there, the Rockets are really good all of a sudden. And you don't feel the stink of, although a lot of those players played through the stink, you don't feel the stink of the bad years, right? Winning will cure it quickly. Winning cures it quicker than losing sends it off the wire, sends it into the spiral. I think the challenge here is that the Blazers, it's hard to see what's on the other side for the Blazers, and I think that's the challenge. It's probably hard for in Houston to see the other side when they really stunk, and certainly there are examples of teams, say like the Pistons of the last decade, the Kings of most of the 21st century, where it's like, okay, keep cycling through it again. So certainly there are challenges there, but I don't think the Blazers' problems are like deep rooted such that like adding talent couldn't cure it. It couldn't help them regain their footing. But that's several steps away, to be certain. And I think that is the challenge. And this is, I think the Blazers envisioned a couple years in the gutter, right? I think it is pretty clear that this is the path that Joe Cronin plotted all along. Whether he should have gone into this path more aggressively sooner, I think is maybe the debates. But there was a time when many Blazer fans would have been irate that the Blazers chose this path. And I think the problem was that it was the saying you wanted to win, but making moves that looked like you wanted to rebuild, and kind of spending 2 years kind of half-stepping prior to these 2 seasons. And so now it feels like, okay, they've been tanking for 4 years, but they've sort of only been really tanking for 2 because they were kind of caught in this middle ground for a little bit too long, right? It's like, I think that might be the more challenging part. So I think what the challenge is here, and what the Blazers are kind of running up against, is when you keep guys around who seem like short timers, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton, who are actually around for a medium amount of time, it gets to this weird vibe place. Again, I don't think there's like, I don't get the sense being around the team that things are like perfectly hunky-dory and the team loves each other. But I also don't get the sense that there is like a deep-seated beef and like that things are rotten, right? I think that there is a lot of like, losing sucks and we feel like we're stuck here a little bit is sort of the from the public reporting and a little bit of chatting with guys in the locker room. It's like, that's how I feel. The way to cure it is to get talent. The challenge for the Blazers is, how do they get talent? Can they make trades to get talent? Seems unlikely that they have like a bunch of juicy trade pieces that can naturally add talent. They're going to have to, they're going to have to get creative. They added Denny Avdia. He's talented. He'll help them into the future. We'll see if they can do something again like that. That costs 2 first-round picks, 2 seconds, and a veteran contract. Those are pricey moves to move forward with like what amounts to like a good role player, right? Like Denny Avdia has maybe the upside of like a second best player on a really good team, maybe more accurately like a third best player on a really good team, but like he's a good basketball player, but they had to pay to get a good basketball player on the roster. Like and I think that's where you look at this and say like, how do they regain their footing? Do they have a path out? And I don't really have an answer to this question. I think it's just worth considering. It's like, the Blazers have charted this way, and I think in some ways it's the pragmatic way to get back to the top in the NBA is to end up at the bottom, but they're not all the way at the bottom, more on that in a moment. And like the way that they get out is to add talent. Well, they're going to at some point have to nail a draft pick. Not get one mostly right, but nail a draft pick. Like add an all-NBA level talent, because you don't get out without that. And they're going to have to nail some trades along the way as well. Winning can cure it. Winning fixes it faster than losing breaks it. But the path out of there remains a bit murky to me, and I think that's the challenge of this season, is that the walls have been torn down, and it's not 100% clear what the new walls are even friggin' built out of just yet. I got some other questions in the third segment about Donovan, Clingan, and winning basketball games. Join me in that third segment, won't ya? First, though, let's talk about Game Time. It's the place to make memories going to live events. Whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy, you can take the ones you love or the ones you're hoping will love you in the future, and you can go make a memory with them at a live event. Go see a sporting event. Go see a concert. Go see some theater. Go see a comedian that you love. And Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets to those events with the new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Download the Game Time app. Pull it up the app. The venue's right there on your phone. You'll see the Game Time picks throughout the venue. Best places to save money, get good seats. You can toggle in all-in pricing, so what you see is what you get. When you're looking through all those great deals, there's gonna be no surprise fees at checkout. If it says it's gonna cost you $58, when you go to pay, $58 is what's gonna show up in your cart. Plus, you can click and view the seat right from the seat in the app, right from where you're going to sit before you even buy anything. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use that redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Still a pass, first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blaze. Still cruising along here with a mailbag episode. Got a question about Donovan Clingan from a couple different listeners. Listener Scott and listener Rob asked 2 versions of a Donovan Clingan question that I think are related. Scott asks, what is the one skill from the Blazers' other 3 centers you would add to Donovan Clingan to help him improve his game? So that's Duop Reith, Rob Williams, and DeAndre Ayton. I think this one's obvious for me. I would take DeAndre Ayton's right-handed hook shot. I think DA has good touch on that right-handed hook. I would offer that to Donovan Clingan because his biggest struggle right now is he doesn't have a way to score on offense. He doesn't have a go-to move. He is not a great pick and roll finisher. He's a straight up bad one. Like he doesn't have a way he can score on offense. He has some defensive potential, but but the offense is only theoretical. It's like in the future, Donovan Clingan could be this, right? But like in the present, it's like, how does he score? And I think that was always the question with him, even as a prospect, but I think it has become more of an answer lately. So like, what if he had a right-handed hook? What if he had a go-to move that he could score with? I think that's 100% the skill that I would add to him, which is in line with a question from listener Rob, who asks, sign the email, Rob with 1B, which I like. Shout out to Rob with 1B. Rob with 1B asks, is Donovan Clingan healthy? The way this works for me is if the guys play, they're healthy. Obviously, he does not look as good as he did prior to the knee injury. Prior to the knee injury, in 17 games, Donovan Clingan was shooting 52.6% from the floor and blocking 2.2 shots a game. In about the same number of minutes, 10 games after returning from an MCL sprain, he's shooting 48% from the floor and blocking 0.6 shots per game, not even one. A vast reduction in the number of block shots, and he's shooting worse from the field, and you just watch him, and he doesn't look like he's moving as well. And he hasn't had those moments. Like, again, like I'm fully bought into the idea that he's not good on offense, like, duh. But like, there haven't been those, like, pre-injury, obviously he had that monster game against Minnesota, which was like eye-opening, but he obviously that's going to be hard to get back to. But like, he hasn't had a moment where you're like, or, you know, a stretch of 6 minutes where you're like, oh, Donovan Clingan can play, and here's like proof of that. I think this is, I think he's looked a little bit worse since then. Maybe some of it is like, you know, you're playing you're playing deeper into the season, but I think some of it is just like, he's playing with a huge knee brace on after suffering an MCL sprain that was called a grade 2 MCL sprain that usually causes guys to miss, about a month on average, according to Jeff Stotts of In Street Clothes, a little over a month, 40 days. And Donovan Clingan came back in like a shade over 2 weeks, like in just shy of 3 weeks. Like he was, you know, he's ready to go and he's playing. I'm going to assume if he's able to play that you can consider him healthy, but he's been worse. And he kind of looks a little physically worse. Some of that might just be like he bricks shots, and if he made shots, I would feel like, nah, he's okay. But I agree that he doesn't look 100%. But again, if he plays, I'm going to consider, I think the way we have to do this, to be fair to everyone, is say like healthy enough to play. And if you're healthy enough to play, you get judged on the results, albeit like we can allow for some context when we say healthy enough to play. Okay, final question of the show comes from listener Natalie, who's like many of you, I'll say this. I asked for questions yesterday on the program, and so many of you sent me emails. I am so thankful for that. What a cool thing, a cool community we've grown here. I'm so thankful to all of you who listen and make this show part of your daily routine, make this show part of your Blazer fandom experience, and so many of you for writing in. I will do my best to respond to many of those emails, but I got a lot. It was a little bit overwhelming. So Natalie mentions, first time, long time. And Natalie, this is clipped from a larger email, much like Clint's question, but this is, Natalie asks, I have spent years resisting rooting for the Blazers to lose, only to finally talk myself into embracing the tank this season. And now I'm worried that they're winning too much, Mike. Have I talked myself into forgetting what basketball is about, or is there some valid reason to be concerned about the Blazers winning? The answer to this question is undoubtedly, in my mind, both. Both. Watching a team you like play basketball and rooting for them to lose is indeed forgetting about the point. That is forgetting the point. However, a pragmatic fan can recognize that the NBA incentivizes losing and that the Blazers, on the path they're on, have some incentive to lose basketball games, and they are perhaps winning a few too many for that incentive. I think both of those can be true at the same time, and I think it is the weird juxtaposition of wanting this team to get better is that you kind of want them to improve and get better, but then like... You know, Anthony Simons doesn't even get a shot off at the buzzer, and you're like, ah! You know, it's hard to in real time, it is hard to square what is a rational reaction to any given Blazer game. And I think this is like to Clint's problem is it's just like the organizational long game maybe doesn't square with like what some guys want to do on the courts and what those guys want to do on the court is like not have a bad time. But a couple things on the Blazers winning too much. ESPN's BPI has the Blazers with the projected to finish with the 7th worst record in the league this season at 32-50. I will be straight up stunned if the Blazers win 32 games. I will be dumbfounded, baffled, bamboozled. I will be truly. I should have done the Brian Wheeler alliteration there. Shout out to Wheels. But like I would be very surprised if the Blazers managed to win 20 more games this season because they're going to at some point hit the eject button. I know that it maybe doesn't feel like they're going to, but I'm telling y'all, this team is going to hit the eject button hard at some point. Hard. They're going to, whether they make trades or whether they make up injuries whole cloth as they've done each of the last 3 seasons, maybe 4, like they are going to hit the eject button and they're going to sit guys who help them win in favor of dudes who they find off the street to come play and lose basketball games for them. I am confident they're going to do that. And the only reason I'm confident because they're going to do that is because I've watched them do that for several seasons. But ESPN says 7th right now, based on their roster. The BPI, this Basketball Power Index, ESPN's predictive tool, has the Blazers finished with the 7th worst record in the league at 32-50. That would be a stunner to me. Cleaning the Glass also has a metric about win differential. That is, how many more or fewer wins do you have based on your net rating, your efficiency differential. So the difference between your offense, points allowed per 100 possessions versus points scored per 100 possessions. And based on that differential, what would a typical team with that differential, how many wins would they have? Well, the typical team with the Blazers win differential at this point in the season would be 8-27. The Blazers are 12-23. If the Blazers are 8-27, right on track, right? Certainly losing some games by 30 and 40 allows you a couple 40-point home losses. Get kind of chunks up that efficiency rating or chunks down rather that efficiency rating and suggests that you're maybe worse than you are some nights because when it goes south, it goes very far south. But the Blazers have the highest win differential based on their net rating of any team in the league. No team has more wins than their net rating would suggest than the Blazers. They are plus 3.9. I rounded it up to 4 for you. I think that is sort of telling about this. They've probably overachieved a little bit. The Blazers have played 17 games that qualify as clutch. That's games that are within 5 points in the final 5 minutes, and they're 8-9 in those games. That's about right. Typically games that are close are basically a coin flip. Teams that are less talented are probably going to be a little worse on the coin flip. 48%, and teams that are better are going to win a little bit better, 52% or whatever. But for the most part, they're a coin flip. When you get to close games in the NBA, when games get decided by 6 possessions at the end of the game, yeah, they're a coin flip, right? It is the best teams avoid clutch situations. The worst teams can't avoid playing close games because they let leads slip away, et cetera, et cetera. And then sometimes you avoid clutch situations by getting blown out all the time. But I think to Natalie's point is it's both things. Natalie's question, it's both things. You are missing the plot, rooting for your favorite team to lose, but also the Blazers are probably, I think the sweet spot is one of the bottom 3 records in the league. But I've said this a bunch, and I'll be consistent here. If the Blazers finish with one of the 5 worst records in the NBA, they're fine. They're fine. They still have a path to do that, but it is harder now because of how bad the New Orleans is all of a sudden. Toronto just cannot get right. I thought Toronto was at some point going to get healthy and get better, but they just cannot get right. And then the usual suspects and the Wizards and the Jazz down at the bottom. It is a more crowded field, and that Brooklyn is going to get worse than the hot start that they had to the season as well. So there's going to be some more folks joining the party at the bottom of the standings. So, yeah, I think the Blazers probably won a couple more games than would be pragmatically ideal, but if the Blazers win games like they've won recently, where it's like Shaedon Sharpe playing a bunch of minutes and leading the team in field goal attempts and scoring, I'm going to be hard-pressed to say bad loss or whatever. I'm just going to say, yeah, they won the game. Such is life. You kind of have to take if you're playing the youngsters and the youngsters are the guys leading you to wins, you kind of just have to take it with you. But I do think at some point the Blazers are going to go 2-24 to close the season. So buckle up for that part, everybody. That's going to do it for today's show. Blazers continuing the road swing with a game against the Pelicans on Wednesday. We will cover that one for you right here on the podcast. So tell your friends about it. Come back for that one. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.